Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next top 10 video, and this one's going to be my top 10 TVs slash anime, basically episodic stuff, not movies. Obviously I did my top 10 movies a few days ago, and I really wanted to put this one out because I'd say overall I probably prefer TV shows over movies, because I know a lot of my movies ended up being like series of movies, so you know, I like a lot of content and stuff like that, really getting into a kind of thing. So TV shows are a big thing for me, and most of the content I put out on my channel is from TV shows. Um, it's probably a lot more predictable, what some of my top shows are, but I think there's going to be a few surprises along the way. Um, Again, I'll point out there's not going to be any comedies, for the same reason I explained in my movie video. Again, nothing overly kind of like adult or anything like that. Um, and again, a preference towards animation. Just that's the stuff that is basically me in terms of content I like. But anyway, I'll just get straight into it now with my number 10. Now, here's the one cheat I did on this list. One cheat because there were two shows I really wanted to talk about, and I really couldn't place them at 10. I wanted either one of them to be there, so I just wanted to say I talk about both of them. It's a tie between Inazuma 11 and Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. Now, Inazuma 11, both of them are animes, obviously. Yu-Gi-Oh! Probably better known than Inazuma 11. But what Inazuma 11 is an anime about a kids' football team. Now, not American football, actual football. An actual football team, and the idea of this is that it's basically Pokemon crossed with football. That's the idea, in that each player basically has these special attacks that are their saves from the goalkeeper, shots, defense, and stuff like that. And it's just very interesting, and that it just treats this as normal. And again, it's one of those shows I got into because of that. I got into it because the guy, he jumps like a mile into the air, does some crazy spinny stuff, and hits a meteorite of a shot that gets past the goalkeeper. That's what you get into it for, but then you realise that, oh, off the pitch, these kids have some really interesting stuff. As one, they try and get new players on their team, as they try to learn a new move that's going to help them in the next match, as they learn to integrate new people onto the team. And then there's even like some pretty like interesting history stuff that's like crazy plot driven about Inazuma 11. you know um the main school, right, the Raymon 11. There's this famous kind of team from the past that were exceptional, but just before they were about to really make it big, something happened. And so it's about the captain of this new team. His name is Mark Evans in the English dub, and he's basically trying to bring the team back to good form again, because he's basically the only one that's in any way like really good at football, and he's the goalkeeper and captain. The team doesn't even have enough players, and so this is all about this team gradually getting back to being kind of nearly as good as the team that came before. My second kind of tied pick with number 10 is, as I said, Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. Now, this is it's probably one of those things you'd never expect me to have a Yu-Gi-Oh! Show on my top 10 list. And I mean, I'm fairly interested in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Game. I don't really collect the cards anymore, but I have a few from years ago. But this show was the one I kind of kept away from. I'd watched the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Series. I'd even watched some of Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds. But this was the one I kind of kept away from because it was the one set in a kind of school setting. It was the one that didn't really had the kind of packs of cards, not the stuff I didn't really know about that much. But I eventually decided, I'll watch it. I'm in a Yu-Gi-Oh! Mood this month. I'll watch it, and it really surprised me. And what really surprised me was how good the characters were. Even though it was in this school setting, it was fascinating, the character and the kind of plot. That the main character Jaden is this guy who just loves to duel. He loves the thrill of almost losing a duel and then coming back. In that, it wasn't the whole heart of the cards thing. It's just that this guy enjoys dueling and is good without even studying and stuff like that. But the first season is a bit kind of like, okay, it's very basic. There's not much of a threat there, and the characters pretty much stay the same. But as the series goes along, you see Jaden become more and more into the spotlight in terms of the crazy stuff that happens in Yu-Gi-Oh shows. And basically he begins to lose the funness of the game. Um, that so much is on the line when he duels that it, he's used to being in like stressful situations, but when like his friends' lives are on the line, when the world is on the line for these things, it just takes all the fun out of him, and he becomes super serious. He's the biggest character kind of switch you've ever seen, and in a show like this, it's pretty insane that he goes from being the most happy-go-lucky guy ever to being crazy serious and stuff like that. And even when you go into like season 4, which was not even dubbed, I watched a sub of that. It's crazy, like serious how like the change in character of Jaden, as well as that the other characters do stuff like that as well. So it's a show that really surprised me, and so the number 10 slot was reserved for 2 shows that surprised me a lot. Anyway, moving on. Number 9. Number 9 is going to be Transformers Animated. Now, this is the TV show basically that came out before Transformers Prime, and this was the one that really kind of, I suppose, got me back into Transformers. Really, it was the movies, I suppose, that got me back into Transformers, in that they got Transformers like crazy into the spotlight. But the movies are not Transformers in their best, shown in their best light. For me, Transformers Animated just showed the fun that you can have with Transformers. Not everyone liked the animation style, but I did. It was, traditional animation, really nicely done, really clean. But the thing was, they did something different with this show. This was not just your usual Optimus Prime, who was instantly the leader of the Autobots. Instead, you have an Optimus who, while he is a Prime, and that's a pretty good position to have in this world, he's not the leader of the Autobots. He is just a kind of slightly higher up guy than most of them. He's actually the leader of a space bridge technician crew. And he has, he's in this team with Ratchet, Bulkhead, Bumblebee, and Prowl. And the whole idea of the show is basically Optimus Prime going from this character who's just in charge of a maintenance crew to gradually becoming, through the conflict with the Decepticons and contact with the higher-ups in Autobot HQ, becoming the Optimus Prime that we know. And so it was just a very interesting thing. Now, it took 2 seasons pretty much to get going. I'll say 1.5 seasons to get going. The first season is kind of focused a lot on human villains, which, while interesting, you watch Transformers for the Autobots versus the Decepticons, which does happen, and it's much more prevalent in season 2, and especially season 3, which is where the show just hit its peak. And season 3 was excellent, did so much stuff, was very dramatic and stuff like that. But, the reason Transformers Animated is kind of lower on my list and not higher up, because I've really praised it here, is because it was then kind of, the production kind of shut down just as it was hitting its peak. They knew enough time to end the show in about the way they wanted it, but they had plans for a season 4. So they kind of had to, I suppose, rush the ending, though rush is a harsh word here. But either way, it's a nice ending for the show, and it's a really good one. And I think it says a lot that most animated fans are like begging for a Transformers animated comic or season 4 to come out at some stage. It's a really good show. 8 is our first look into live action TV shows, and it's going to be Prison Break. Now, for anyone who doesn't know what this show is, it's a very interesting show. Live action, as I said. And the whole idea of this show is, as it says in the title, it's about a prison break. What happens is the main characters are 2 brothers, Lincoln Burrows and Michael Schofield, with Michael Schofield being the main character. Lincoln is basically sent to prison for a crime that he didn't commit. And Michael kind of knows he didn't commit it, he didn't do this, and so does whatever he can to get him out of prison. But there's a twist. Michael is the really intelligent one, while Lincoln is more of the kind of brute one, even though he's the older brother, that sort of thing. Now, Michael is basically an architect, and he had a hand in actually designing the prison that Lincoln was being sent to. So he has that in him, and as well as that, since he's so intelligent, he kind of knows a lot of the political stuff around why kind of Lincoln was framed for this crime. So his plan is basically that he commits a crime not really out to break the law, but just to get himself sent to the same prison. He does just enough to get himself to the same prison, but not kind of basically uh, get away from his morals, that sort of thing. He robs a bank but doesn't hurt anyone, that sort of thing. Doesn't even take anything. And add to that the fact that he basically gets a full tattoo over all of his arms and all of his chest and back. And that's where the prison break plan is on. So he goes into the prison, gets himself arrested, put in prison, and has the plan on him. And each episode basically is one element of the plan being enacted. So I believe it's the first episode where basically out of the bleachers in the yard, he takes one of a really long screw that he knows is kind of like odd compared to the other ones. It's the only one that's going to be used. It's slightly loose, so he takes it out, and then he has a kind of like a hexagonal design on one of his tattoos, and kind of just grinds it down until it's in the shape of this hexagon, which once like done like that, it basically becomes an Allen key, which you can use to open up the back of his toilet in his cell, which gets him in behind the cell. And so you get an idea of like he uses like every little part of his tattoo to engineer this prison break opportunity, and it's just so cleverly done. Each episode is just interesting to see how that tattoo is going to be utilized, and also, as much as his plan is planned out and he knows everything, the one thing he doesn't know about is the unpredictability of the other inmates and them kind of maybe discovering the plan, getting involved, that sort of thing. Fascinating show, and I've only just talked about stuff from about the first 2 episodes there. Really good show, Prison Break. 7 is going to be an anime called Monster. Now, this one is very interesting. My sister actually recommended this to me after I got her into anime, which is weird. But anyway, this is an interesting anime. It's set in 1986 in Germany, around the time of the Berlin Wall, East-West Germany, that sort of thing. And basically, there's this Japanese doctor, Dr. Kenzo Tenma, and he is a exceptional brain surgeon working in a hospital. And the whole idea of this story comes into play in that one day he has an option basically to choose between performing brain surgery on a really famous person or just an ordinary person who came in first. And because of the hospital politics, he's basically forced to do the operation on the famous person. And he basically gets a really emotional reaction from the family of the person who basically died because he didn't perform the operation. Then, basically, the next day, after he's kind of gone through this kind of stress of like, oh my god, what did I do? The same thing happens, but in this case, it's I think it's like the mayor of the town comes in with a brain surgery, and also a young boy, and he decides to go against hospital politics and perform the surgery on the boy, who he sees as the more serious operation and the right thing to do, not just operating because it's famous, someone famous. And this goes fine. He gets basically he gets a bad rep in the hospital there because he went against hospital politics. But ultimately, as the years goes by after this, he becomes like chief of surgery. Then, I think it's like 10 years later, he encounters the same boy he saved, and it turns out that he's become basically one of the most evil people in the world. And he's killing people and stuff like this, and this is what the monster of the title, and that the doctor believes he's created this monster by saving his life, performing this brain surgery. And they have this meeting in like the first or second episode, and basically Johann says to him that I won't kill you because you saved my life, but I'm still going to go about my kind of evil ways, that sort of thing. And basically Tenma quits his job and basically devotes his life to stopping Johann. And this is a guy who's devoted to saving lives, is now out to end the life. And that's what his kind of character arc is about, and it's fascinating stuff. It's a pretty long anime. I think it's like 76 episodes or something like that, and it takes a lot of detours. Like a lot of people may say it's like filler, but it's a really detailed, I suppose, world they create here, and that you get a lot of character arcs from a lot of different characters. Johann's sister comes into play and is one of the main characters and stuff like that. It's a really good anime. Highly recommended. Number 6 is going to be Transformers Prime. The first show that's still airing that I have on my list. But as you've probably seen from my Transformers Prime episode reviews on my channel, I've just been in love with this show for season 3, which is currently going on about halfway through. Season 1 and 2 were excellent, but season 3 is just, like what I said with Transformers Anime, taking it to a whole other level. Now, we know season 3 is going to be the last, just like animated, but I feel like this has just done so much good stuff, and maybe Prime was better than animated, I feel, a bit over the first 2 seasons, and it's just a really, really good show. Again, because I'm reviewing it right now, I don't really want to say too much, but just it's doing a lot of good stuff. A lot of interesting characters. This is the first real Transformers CG show that's not like one of the anime ones. So Transformers Prime, number 6. Number 5, coming back to live action stuff, BBC's Sherlock. Now, yeah, this is a show that I'd heard a lot about, but I really only got into it a few months ago when podcast co-host Kelly got into it, and then she recommended it to me, and I began to watch it. I really just love this show now. The reason it's probably not higher up on my list is because there has only been 6 episodes, and as long as the episodes are, it still feels like it's a bit light on content, honestly. But that's my only real complaint about it. It's cast perfectly. Benedict Cumberbatch and Martin Freeman as Sherlock and Watson, perfectly done. And then just there's loads of clever stuff throughout this. It's written really well. The use of kind of captions on the screen to show when people get texts, to show how Sherlock's thinking and stuff like that. It's a really intelligent show, and it's one of those things I don't think I really need to explain too much about it. In terms of themes, like I went into with some of the maybe lesser known anime, but just an exceptional show. And the last episode, obviously, the Reichenbach Fall. I think most people know about it, but it's just a really big moment in TV. So highly recommended, Sherlock. Next is going to be Death Note, an anime again, and yeah, but probably a more well-known anime compared to Monster, but I still think it's an excellent anime. I think this one's about 38 episodes long. I'm probably wrong there, but it's in or around that. And the idea of this one is that basically this boy, Light Yagami, is excellent in school, gets amazing grades and stuff like this, but he's beginning to see that there's not a lot of justice in the world. He's beginning to see that a lot of crime goes unpunished due to these little loopholes in the law system and stuff like that. So one day this notebook kind of floats down, and he spots it, and he sees it, and he just becomes entranced with it. He goes out when kind of there's a break in school. He goes out, picks it up, and finds out that it's a death note. And what a death note is basically a book that if you write someone's name in while picturing their face, they die. And there's more to it than just that. There's a lot of different rules about it. You have to spell their name properly. You have to know what their face looks like, and stuff like that. So they do a lot of interesting stuff with the rules of the notebook in terms of why he can kill people, why he can't kill people. But I think the main thing about this is the idea of the theme throughout the show is that do bad people deserve to die? And Light very much of the kind of yes opinion that when he sees criminals kind of that were tried and put into jail or released from jail, he basically writes their name in the death notebook and they die. And he does this to pretty much most well-known criminals. And so in the first week of having the book, he's basically rid the world of the top 100 criminals. And then he keeps beginning to do this over the course of time, and it may seem like it's an amazingly good thing to do, but at the end of the day he is killing people. And this is where it comes to the attention of Elle, who's this super detective who is just as intelligent as Light, but is a bit odd. He's a bit of an odd character, and he's put on the case. And from there the show just becomes this amazing battle between these two characters, in that at the start they don't meet each other yet, and they're still having a battle. there's this moment, where basically the introduction of L is, through the TV he knows kind of that Light is watching roughly, but doesn't know who Light is, and basically says a lot of things that Light has done. So basically, kind of almost tricks Light into doing something, and it's just a fascinating scene early on in the thing. And then from there, Light realizes that, oh, this is a real adversary for me, and almost kind of begins to lose sight of his goal for like justice in the world, and begins to focus more on getting L out of the way so he can go back to doing that. And again, the battle is is amazing, because it's not just that they never meet each other, and so that happens. A lot of the show actually is them together, working together, because Light's put on like a task force to search for the guy known as Kira, which is what everyone's calling him. And the the idea is that um, L introduces himself to Light, and this is in front of a whole task force, and basically says that, if I die in the next week, Light's Kira. And so he's like, oh my god, I can't kill this guy after meeting him. And so it's stuff like that. They're put into these clever situations where Light kind of has no way to kill L without making himself out to be guilty. So, Death Note, fascinating stuff. It, I suppose people maybe complain a bit about this show. What happens in the kind of final 10, 12 episodes? Something big happens and maybe makes the last 10 episodes a bit weak. But my only real problem with Death Note is the ending. I felt needed a bit more time, but for the most part, excellent series. It's definitely deserving of a number 4 place. It's such a thrilling anime, and it manages to do so much with just 2 characters talking in a scene. That's a big thing about this anime. Number 3, coming back to live action once again, Lost. Now you may instantly go like, oh, I think most people know this show. Most people know about Lost. Not everyone probably will have seen it. But I think what most people know about Lost is that it's this mystery show. There's a lot of questions asked, a lot of mysteries presented, and most people probably know that by the end of the show, not all of them were answered, and that's a big complaint that people level at the show. But in my opinion, the best way to describe this show is not as a mystery show; it's as a character-driven show that happens to have mysteries in it, and I think that's the key thing. Lost. Lost is a show about characters, and that's what it goes with throughout all 6 seasons. The characters remain the focus of the episodes, not the mysteries. As big as the mysteries are in the show, and as important to driving the characters forward, the show is always about the characters, and it's often easy to forget that with so many interesting mysteries. But every episode is basically revolves around the focus being on one character, with their backstory being told in that episode. So, season 1, basically, you see in episode 1, the plane crashes on the island. I think everyone knows that, and you have this group of characters come together and meet each other. But in those episodes, you basically you focus on, say, Jack, the main character of the show. You focus on him and what he does on the island, and then half of the episode is actually devoted to some event that happened in his life before the plane crashed. And you begin to see that all of these characters had huge issues in their life, and that crashing on the island, as bad as that is, it's not the worst thing that could have happened to them. Crashing on the island gives them all a new start, and that's what this show really plays with. All the characters are different on the island than they are in their kind of backstories, because they are given this new start with these new people, and it just, again, the mysteries are interesting, and a part of the reason I really get into this show is because of those mysteries. The island is extremely mysterious, the black smoke and stuff like this, but again, the focus is on the characters, who are excellent in my opinion, and there's so many of them over the course of the 6 seasons. Really good show, and I think the best recommendation I could say about Lost is it's a show that was hard to watch, probably, and hard to understand if you were watching it weekly. If you were watching this show weekly with like 26 episodes in a season, and then a year break before season 2 started, you're forgetting stuff about season 1. And that happening like 5 times, this show being 6 seasons long. But now that all the show is out, it's all available on DVD. If you manage to just like sit down over the course of a month or something like that and just go through the series, I think you really understand what the show is about and really get it a lot more than people who just watch it weekly. Either way, 3. Um, Usually the number 2 and 1 pick in these top tens is like the big thing you're waiting for, and to some extent, I know a lot of you are probably waiting to hear my thoughts on these top 2 shows, and you probably already know what they are. But yeah, I'm gonna admit, yeah, they are the 2 Avatar shows. And the order is obviously number 2, The Legend of Korra. The Legend of Korra is a really good show. Yes, there's only been 12 episodes so far, book 1 air. But what Korra did in those 12 episodes was pretty amazing, I think, because it had so much to live up to after Avatar: The Last Airbender. Like, you have no idea how much they had to live up to. And as much as so many people criticize Korra for little things it does wrong, I think it's an exceptional show. Korra as a main character is interesting, really interesting. And what they did so well was make her just as interesting as Aang, but she's a completely different character despite having the same role as Avatar. And that's what they did well. She's the complete opposite of Aang. Not just the boy-girl thing, but she's a water avatar. She, rather than being kind of quite peaceful like Aang, is kind of super aggressive, really eager to be get into fights and stuff like that. While Aang was very kind of passive, not really wanting to get into fights, very peaceful, and he was spiritual. Korra's not at all. So that was interesting in the start, but not just that. Korra is an avatar who knew she was the avatar since she was 4 years old. That is a big thing. Aang, you have all the angst about him becoming the avatar. With this, you get a lot of that intro out of the way, that you have a character who wanted to be the avatar from 4 years old. And that's very interesting, and that's something I think people almost forget when they watch The Legend of Korra, and they see what happens over the course of it. I'm going to spoil it right here, because, Korra loses her bending obviously in the last episode, and people maybe fail to see why that's such a big deal. But when you know that this is a character who, for 14 years of, 13 years of her 17-year life, has known bending, has known that she's the avatar. Losing that is huge for her, and she goes through stuff like that as she has to handle the fact that she's not very good at airbending, and that's a big thing for a character who has been such a prodigy at the other 3 elements. Add to that Amon, who is a fascinating villain, and again the complete opposite of Ozai as the main villain of Korra, in that he's always there. Ozai was just threat in the background. Amon was always there doing these little things, sending his Chewbacca out here, getting involved, and that's what I like about Korra. It did a lot of things differently to Avatar: The Last Airbender, but kept it in the same world. It managed to do things 70 years on, but keep it as I know that this is the Avatar world, so they balanced it pretty well in my opinion. And biggest thing right now I can say about Korra is the amount of potential it has for its remaining 40 episodes. So much potential this show has, in that Book 2 Spirits is shaping up to be amazing. Origin of the Avatar, Korra's spiritual development of the other characters, Asami going through something with Future Industries, Bolin finding his own path, Mako becoming a cop. That's all amazing stuff going forward. And then, as much as people criticize the show for only being 12 episodes, look at the amount of stuff we got in those 12 episodes. Look at the first 12 episodes of Avatar: The Last Airbender, and you'll see that it didn't even do that much in the grand scheme of a series. This did a lot. The format of Korra, to me, is amazing. That they're going to do each season be a story of its own with the character development and a few plot threads going forward. That's fascinating to me. Now, on to number 1, which it basically answers itself. Avatar: The Last Airbender. The only reason I'm placing this above Korra is because Korra has only had 1 season. I'm not going to be one of those people to say that nothing will ever replace Avatar: The Last Airbender as my number one pick. For me, Korra has so much potential that it could, maybe even next season, replace Avatar: The Last Airbender as my top show. But for now, I think it had such a good 3 seasons, Avatar: The Last Airbender, it has to be my number one pick. Because, you know, here's the thing. With Avatar, I always think about, it's my favourite show. It is. But then when I try to think about it, nothing instantly comes to my mind as like, why do I like this show so much? And because I'm so into it, I'm so into doing stuff on YouTube, so into running an Avatar fan site, doing an Avatar podcast, I often forget about, like, what is it about Avatar that I like so much? And then I kind of really have to, like, analyse it, and I'm like, I initially got into Avatar because of the bending, because of the action and that concept of bending the elements. That was interesting to me. That's why I first watched this show. And the reason I stayed was not because of the action. That was great. I stayed because of the characters. And I think that is it. It's all about characters in Avatar. It does characters so well. Aang as a protagonist is just a character you instantly fall in love with and just really want to do well. Katara is a really strong female character, and again, a character you want to follow. You want her to learn waterbending immediately after the first episode. Sokka, as much as you are getting a bit annoyed with him for being so angry with Aang, you respect him for protecting his tribe, respect him for protecting his sister, and that's all in the first episode. That sort of stuff that's presented to us. And then as you go across this amazing journey with these characters, you get characters like Toph and Zuko joining Team Avatar at the end. Zuko's journey from being basically main villain, discovering in episode 3, he's not the main villain, and he's kind of like almost anti-hero, really just in the middle of Zuko as it goes through the whole series, and then he's like hero villain, ultimately going through this crazy journey and ultimately choosing his right destiny with joining Team Avatar. You got villains like Azula, you have Combustion Man, and all of these characters. Like, I could probably say any name of a character, and there's something to them. Like, Longshot. He's in like 3 episodes, and you know a lot about him, even from the few moments he's in it. And just, that's the thing. It creates this universe that I just fell in love with, basically. The idea of the worlds, fire, earth, air, water nations, the concept of bending, the way characters are done in this show, the way the fights are done is just an amazing concept. How many Nickelodeon shows have fight coordinators like Sifu Kisu on them? Not many. I believe they're starting to do it more now. I think Kung Fu Panda has Sifu Kisu on it as well, maybe. But either way, Avatar basically almost put that into the mainstream of a kids TV show having a martial arts consultant on it. And I could probably sit here for an hour or two and talk about how much I love Avatar: The Last Airbender. I'm just going to end it by really saying if there's any flaw with this show, it's maybe that book 1, in the grand scheme of the series, is a bit slow around the middle section compared to the other seasons. In that book 2, you have that Bossing Stay story arc to kind of add something new to the picture. With book 3, you have the invasion, you have all the action of the finale coming up. But with book 1, you have the start, the discovery of Sozon's comet, and then a kind of pretty large gap between they find out about the comet and get to the Northern Water Tribe. So it's between those episodes where I felt like if anything could be done to improve the show, it was add a little plot there. Add like a 2-part episode where it makes sense for them to get away from their journey. But, this show is so good that, you look at the critical analysis of this from, famous critics. You look at this from fan, casual perspective. This is a well-liked show from pretty much every perspective. And that's rare. And, I don't think I'm too, fanboyish or radical in saying that, for me, this is like probably the best, but definitely one of the best animated shows ever because of what it did, and for that reason, it's my number one pick. And I think it had to be my number one pick because look at the amount of stuff like I do in relation to this show. I help run a fan site, I do a podcast, I run this YouTube channel, and other stuff, all based around this show and the universe that was created around it. So there's my number one pick. Completely obvious to you. I probably didn't even do this show justice in what I just said there because, you want to know how many the notes that I have for this show? This video, this is the notes I have. I have the list, and I just wrote down some stuff about Monster and Prison Break just to make sure I get the character names and some of the details correct. That's all I have. With Avatar, I'm just going off the top of my head. So there's my top 10 TV slash anime show list. Again, comment below on what you thought of my list. Do you agree with my choices? Disagree? What are some of your top shows? Thanks for watching this video, and bye.